Hey there, it's me Eden. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and visit my Patreon page for early access, link in the description. Alex Harrison walked out of the bathroom in deep meditation. Today was the day he had been waiting for, hoping for as long as he could remember. Today he would undergo a genetic replacement treatment, a highly experimental treatment developed by some biotech company he had never heard of. But when he heard what they were offering, he jumped at the chance. There were no guarantees of any kind about anything, but the chance to be what he had always wanted was something he couldn't pass up. He would start the journey to womanhood today. Many people would ask him why he wanted this if they knew about it. His family would be angry and ashamed, he knew. But he would take the chance. It was nothing he could really explain. It was just something he felt. For as long as he could remember, he felt more comfortable around girls, doing what they did, instead of around guys. His personality was more passive, less prone to anger, less testosterone-driven. Everything seemed right for him to be a woman, except of course for the fact that his particular genome had specified that he would be a male. But today that would change. He would be able to experience womanhood in its full glory. He might even be able to give birth. There were risks, of course. The process could not work. It could deform him. It could kill him. But the doctors had told him there was a good chance it would work. His mother had always told him to listen to doctors, to trust them. He would do so in a way she never intended now. Also, he would need to change jobs. He was an electrical engineer, designed and put together circuits and computers. There was a dearth of such jobs, so he didn't need to worry. He had made arrangements for his identity after the transformation. He would be Alexis Laura Harrison. He had always liked that name. Alex checked around the room for the last time. He was dressed nicely, but not formally. He had his wallet and keys in his hand, and was heading for the door, checking to see if he had forgotten anything. Then the door opened. He had no roommates, he had no girlfriend, and there was no one who should just barge right in without knocking or ringing the doorbell. Through the door stepped a woman who looked nice, but not spectacular. She was wearing faded jeans with a plain white t-shirt. She was also wearing a backpack. She bore a certain familiarity he couldn't explain. She moved quickly, hastily, and closed the door behind her before stepping towards him. "Okay, Alex," she says, as if in a rush. "Alex, I can't tell you who I am, where I am from, or how I know what I know, but you have to trust me," the woman said earnestly. She continued hurriedly, "You can't go for the treatment you are going for today. Please listen to me. If you do, you will contract a disease that will be incurable and will kill you in 10 years or so. You will be miserable. You will be shunned and avoided by your family. You will have few friends. You will regret this," she said, apparently finished. She had spoken with an earnestness and conviction that stunned Alex. That, however, didn't keep him from getting angry. "Now you listen here," he shouted angrily, with all the pent-up emotion of a lifetime of a dream that had always been beyond his reach. And now that it was right there, this stranger, this woman would just walk into his house and tell him not to try to pull him away from his dream. You, he stammered, shaking his finger at the woman, "I don't know how you know what you know, and I don't care. This has been my dream, my purpose in life. You won't, and neither will anyone else, stop me from taking this chance at my dream. I want this more than anything, more than life itself," he screamed, in an ever louder and more angry voice. All the while, the woman shrunk back, withering under the verbal assault, and by the time he had finished, she was crying, shaking her head, muttering, "No, no," the whole time. "Get the fuck out of my house, I'm going to seize my dream by the horns." Get the fuck out. Leave, he continued, his blood boiling now. He grabbed her by the arm and threw the crying woman out of his house. He slams the door and begins to quickly pace around the foyer, his anger slowly dissipating. Finally he calms down enough and leaves the house, locking the door behind him. He walks up to his car. Looking around, there is no sign of the strange woman. He gets in and begins driving to the facility where he will undergo his treatment. He curses as he glances at the clock, realizing he will be a bit late. But on the ride, doubts begin creeping up in his mind. How exactly will your family take it? Said one voice in his head. You know they won't take it well. You can hear their words, can't you? And what if something does go wrong? Asks another voice. You could be deformed, or even killed. Is that worth this? Is it really? Isn't life worth living? It really won't change anything, proclaimed another. That's what it is all about. You only think you want it. You really just use it as a scapegoat, something to take all the blame. What will you blame for all the things that go wrong in your life after this? As these thoughts flashed through his head, his facial expression changed to match what was being said, in various mixtures of confusion, doubt, and deep thought. Finally, he lashed out at these doubts. This is what I've always wanted. If I back down now, I will regret it for the rest of my life. It is now or never, he thought to himself. He had a minute ago felt as if under the scrutiny of a packed house at some theater, with himself standing on the stage. After this thought, he smiled. He felt better already. But there was one last voice to have it say. You may regret it anyway, was all it said. That was more unsettling, and Alex didn't smile for the rest of the ride. Hello, Mr. Harrison, a little late, aren't we? Asked Dr. Thomas. Are you nervous? Do you feel all right? Alex had gotten there about half an hour ago, had gone through all the pre-procedure nonsense, and was finally in the room where the procedure would take place, the place where he would spend the next 2 months in a state of deep sleep. It would take that long, more or less, for the changes to take place. At least that was the best guess of the doctors. He was minutes away from the procedure. Yeah, a little bit. Well, if you want, we can still call it off, he said in a non-convincing manner. He would go through with it. No. I'm ready, I'm sure. Good, I'll go and get things moving, then, said the doctor. He then turned around and left the procedure room. Alex was all alone. He still had a few doubts, but nothing very big. He was nervous, but also excited at the same time. This was what he always wanted. He thought back to the incident with the woman. He could only wonder. He wanted to believe, to say, that she was wrong, but she could be right. He had never really believed in God, but perhaps she was a messenger from above. Or maybe she was just well-informed. Or maybe she was just crazy. Who knows? There was one thing that kept nagging him about her though. She had seemed familiar somehow when he had seen her. He still felt as though he remembered her from somewhere or something. But he couldn't quite put his proverbial finger on it. It was then that Dr. Thomas and a nurse with a syringe entered. Ready, Mr. Harrison, the doctor asked as the nurse stepped up to his arm and prepared to inject the sedative. As ready as I'll ever be, Alex responded. 2 things occurred to him as he laid down on the bed he had been sitting on. First, that the procedure room was sure dark and foreboding for a doctor's place of work. A sign? And the second thing, the nagging familiarity of the woman, was on his mind until his very last moment of consciousness. And at that last moment, the last he hoped he would spend awake as a male, he realized who the woman reminded him of. The surprise of it kept him awake for an extra second. Then everything went to black. 12 weeks later. Her first glimpses of the world after the procedure were of bright white light. Over the course of the next hour, she thought she could discern sounds, and later voices. Eventually she could tell from the square grid of tiles above him, that he was laying flat in a well-lit room. There were many voices. Alexis finally got up the will and strength to turn her head to the side she thought that the voices were coming from. There were 3 or 4 doctors and nurses standing to that side, with a nurse, observing her. She saw the movement and alerted the other 3. They turned. Was that Dr. Thomas? Well, hello Alexis, how are you feeling this afternoon? He asked. It was indeed Dr. Thomas. He didn't look or sound happy at all. I feel tired, Alexis said, seeing as Dr. Thomas had called her that, signifying success. Yes, you will be groggy for the next few hours, he said, retaining an air of unease about him. Was the operation successful, was the only thing she could ask. She felt more awake now, but felt weak and in no way ready to get up. She still saw the look the doctors and nurses shared, however, that all hadn't gone as planned. Miss Harrison, Dr. Thomas said, pulling up a chair, not everything went well, to be perfectly honest. You are indeed fully female, even able to become pregnant and give birth. However, he paused here, during the procedure, a small piece of genetic material broke loose and began to spread throughout your body. It is what is known as a viroid. There is no cure, we don't even know where to begin. We can give you treatment for it that will prolong your life, but you most likely live more than 10, 12 years or so, unless a major leap in medical technology happens. Either that or a miracle. And any children you have would become infected. There's even the chance of sexual transmission, though the viroid would need to be studied to determine whether or not that is true. I am sorry, Miss Harrison. We only mostly succeeded. Alexis could see the sadness and concern in his face. Alexis wondered whether that was for her or his project. Alexis decided it was the former, if for no other reason that she needed it greatly at this point. She began to cry. The nurse who had been observing her earlier came forward and embraced her. It felt so good. Ms. Walters, when Miss Harrison is stronger and ready, you can help her move into her temporary room, she heard Dr. Thomas say. The nurse holding her nodded. Alexis drifted into sleep in Ms. Walters' embrace. Please subscribe my channel for the next part. And visit my Patreon page for early access.